Imagine building a billion-dollar empire with your husband, only to come home and find another woman wearing your robe, in your house, calling him baby. That's how Kristy's new life began. Before we begin, please subscribe, like this video and tell me in the comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more thrilling stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get into the story. The sun dipped low over the pool as Kristy Andre sat on the edge of the marble patio, one hand resting on the silver suitcase beside her. Her designer robe fluttered slightly in the breeze, but it wasn't on her back anymore. It was on someone else. Behind her, the housekeeper silently dragged a mop across the tiles, erasing the last footprints of the life Kristy thought she still had. This wasn't a vacation. This wasn't a goodbye. This was a woman being erased. Kristy had returned early from a charity gala, just a few hours away, not even overnight. But in that time, everything changed. The housekeeper no longer looked her in the eye. The security code had been changed. Her key card didn't work. Her name was nowhere on the call list for the front gate. Still, she walked through. Still thinking this must be some mistake. Then she saw them. Through the sliding glass doors, laughter spilled out, her husband, Andre Walters, and a younger woman draped across his lap. The woman was wearing Kristy's robe, drinking from Kristy's wedding crystal, sitting beside the man Kristy had helped build into a billionaire. The walls inside had been redone. Family photos gone. Her face replaced with Lillian's. And when she stepped closer, Andre didn't look shocked. He didn't stammer or apologize. He only said, "You shouldn't be here. The divorce is finalized. This house isn't yours anymore." Kristy froze. She had never signed any divorce papers. She hadn't seen a lawyer. And yet the suitcases were lined up by the pool. Her suitcases. Her initials. Her life, packed and waiting by the gate. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She picked up the handle of her suitcase and walked. But that silence? That dignity? It wasn't surrender. It was the beginning of war. Kristy checked into a hotel that night with nothing but her luggage and her silence. She didn't call Andre. She didn't tell anyone what had happened. But as she sat by the window overlooking the city, the same city she helped build with him, she realized she wasn't just erased. She was robbed. And now, she was going to take everything back. The sliding doors of the hotel whispered shut behind her. Kristy stepped into the lobby with her suitcase in one hand and a leather handbag in the other. The marble floor beneath her heels was cold, glossy, impersonal, perfect. She didn't want softness. She didn't want comfort. She wanted stillness. A place where no one knew her name. Not Mrs. Walters. Not the tech mogul's wife. Just Kristy. The concierge asked if she needed help. She shook her head once. Just a room. High floor. Quiet. When the door to her suite finally closed behind her, she stood in the silence for a long time, hands clenched at her sides. She hadn't cried yet. Not by the pool. Not when Andre told her to leave. Not when Lillian smiled like she was the one who belonged. But now. Her fingers loosened. Her knees buckled. She slid to the floor, her back against the cold wall, legs folded like a child's. And then it came. The grief. The rage. The hollowness. Not sobs, just tears that ran silently, endlessly, down her face. She didn't wipe them away. She let them fall. This wasn't heartbreak. This was a burial. Not just of a marriage, but of 7 years of loyalty, late nights, strategy sessions, and quiet sacrifices no one ever saw. Kristy wasn't the trophy wife. She had been the blueprint. They met when Andre had nothing. No company. No investors. Just a dream and an overdrawn checking account. He was charming, ambitious, and completely unprepared for the real tech world. Kristy was a systems engineer at a mid-tier firm, already respected for her problem-solving mind and poise under pressure. He told her, over cheap coffee and shared ramen, "I've got the vision. But you? You're the strategy. Together we'll build something insane." She said yes to him before she said yes to the company. It started in their garage. Code, late nights, balancing bills. Kristy built the infrastructure. Managed the early team. Wrote pitch decks while learning how to hide how little sleep she got. Then came the first investor. The second. Series A. By Series B, Kristy had quit her job, abandoned a promotion that was practically gift-wrapped, and poured everything, into Walters Tech. She was never on the letterhead. But she was in every line of code. When the money came, she let Andre take the spotlight. The press called him a visionary. They called her his glamorous support system. But she didn't care, she was building an empire behind the curtain. Until the curtain fell. The hotel suite was dark, save for the soft city light seeping in from the floor-to-ceiling windows. Kristy sat on the edge of the bed, laptop open, hands trembling as she logged into the cloud drive she shared with Andre, for emergency access, he once said. The password still worked. Apparently, he hadn't thought she'd be sharp enough, or broken enough, to check. At first, the files looked harmless. Investor memos. Old pitch decks. Then she found a folder labeled Charity Filings 2022. Her name was on several of the forms. She opened one. Then another. Her blood ran cold. It wasn't charity paperwork. It was a divorce petition. And there, her signature. Perfect, precise. Only, she had never signed it. She searched deeper. A quitclaim deed for the house. Asset transfer forms with forged timestamps. Letters of reassignment for her shares she never even agreed to give up. Documents naming Andre sole owner of every property, account, and holding. The paper trail was polished. Filed. Finalized. Her identity had been weaponized against her. He switched them, she whispered aloud, the truth crashing over her in a wave. The charity events she helped coordinate, the ones where she signed forms in a flurry between speeches and ribbon cuttings. He'd swapped documents, page by page, signature by signature. Kristy stared at the laptop like it was a stranger. Her heart didn't just break, it hardened. She called a lawyer first thing the next morning. A referral from an old Stanford classmate. Discreet. Expensive. White shoe firm. He listened to everything in silence. When she finished, he sighed. I believe you. But Andre has already locked down the courts. Filed in Nevada, strategically. Judge assigned is someone he's funded through PACs. It'll take a miracle to unwind this without major leverage. So you're saying it's over? I'm saying the legal route will be slow, messy, and expensive. You'll need proof, strategy, and time. And even then, they'll paint you as the bitter ex-wife. Kristy closed her eyes. She thought of Lillian wearing her robe. Her name erased from the mailbox. The staff looking past her like she was invisible. She didn't want revenge. She wanted justice. Correction. Balance. When the call ended, she stared out the window for a long time. The skyline twinkled beneath her. Dozens of high-rises, and she had helped fund at least 3 of them. A wing of a hospital bore her name. A tech incubator downtown still used her branding playbook. She helped build this city. And now, the city didn't even know she existed. Night fell. Kristy sat by the window, barefoot, her laptop closed beside her and the legal documents still open in her mind like wounds. The phone was in her hand before she realized she'd even picked it up. She scrolled to a number. One she hadn't used in years. Frank Miller. They'd met during Series B funding. Back then, he was Andre's biggest rival, a rising star in fintech who challenged Walter's tech for dominance in mobile payments. Kristy always liked him. He respected her ideas. Spoke to her like she was the one running things, because she was. Andre hated him. Kristy's thumb hovered over the call button. She exhaled once. Then pressed it. The line rang once. Twice. Then. Kristy Andre. His voice was calm. Curious. Frank, she said. I need a favor. And I need you to not ask questions until I'm finished. Then say what you need to say. And for the first time since the suitcase hit the pavement by her pool, Kristy didn't feel erased. She felt seen. Frank Miller didn't waste time. By the next morning, he was standing in Kristy's hotel suite, a tailored navy jacket slung over his shoulder, laptop under one arm, and the same steady, sharp look in his eyes that had made Silicon Valley respect and fear him. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't offer pity. He simply set his laptop on the table, rolled up his sleeves, and said, "Show me everything." Kristy handed him a folder, thick, worn, overflowing with printouts, USB drives, and scribbled notes she'd taken between sleepless nights. These are copies of what I found in our shared drive. Most of it's hidden under charity filings and vendor contracts. But I'm sure there's more. Frank's fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, already opening shell company directories, offshore registrar sites, and data leaks the public didn't even know existed. Andre always thought he was the smartest person in the room, Frank said, eyes never leaving the screen. But he's not careful. Just arrogant. Kristy sat beside him, calm and focused. She wasn't there to mourn anymore. She was there to build a case. Frank had always been Andre's opposite. Where Andre was flash, Frank was precision. Andre chased headlines. Frank built foundations. In a city full of tech egos and inflated valuations, Frank's firm had quietly doubled investor returns over 5 years and never once made a scandal page. Kristy remembered their first meeting, Series B round, investor pitch in San Francisco. Andre had dismissed Frank's offer, calling it small-time capital. But Frank had pulled Kristy aside during the break. "You're the one running this, aren't you?" he'd said, with a knowing smile. "Not officially," she'd replied. Shame. If it were your name on the paperwork, I'd have signed yesterday. She had never forgotten that. Now, years later, he was here again, not as a rival, but as a partner. Over 2 days, they worked non-stop. Coffee. Whiteboards. Sticky notes covering every surface in the suite. They found offshore accounts in the British Virgin Islands, routed through fake charities supposedly raising money for education in underdeveloped regions. In truth? No schools. No recipients. No records of donated materials. Just $40 million, scattered across shadowy shell corporations, all recently consolidated under the name Lillian C. Marshall. He's using her, Frank said, eyes narrowing. She's the puppet. Her name, her ID, her digital footprint, it's all the smoke screen. Kristy opened a folder labeled Kristy Private Foundation Ledger and clicked through. There it was. Bank transfers. Signature authorizations. Email confirmations, using her old logins. He didn't just erase me, she said. He used me to hide the money. Frank looked up. You have enough to bury him. But we need it airtight. Verifiable. And we'll need someone who can go deeper. Kristy nodded. I have someone. His name was Langston Price. Ex-Cybercrime Division, now freelance. The kind of man who could recover deleted files from a burned laptop or find the original metadata on a photoshopped invoice. Kristy had worked with him once, back when she helped Andre dodge a potential security breach during their second funding round. She paid him from her own bonus and never told Andre. Langston didn't ask why she was calling. He just said, "Send me the access. I'll get back to you in 48 hours. Andre wasn't worried. In fact, he was throwing another party. The media had dubbed them the Walters Evenings, invite-only gatherings full of celebrities, influencers, and VC sharks circling for scraps of Andre's approval. Lillian was always at the center, glammed up, tipsy, smiling for paparazzi in the same dresses Kristy once wore to TechCrunch and Davos. She posted Instagram stories in Kristy's kitchen, spinning in Kristy's walk-in closet, lounging by the pool in the same robe Kristy wore the day she left. New life, new me, one caption read, her manicured fingers wrapped around a champagne flute. Queen Things Only, read another, set to a track by Megan Thee Stallion, as she tossed a designer bag on a bed Kristy had picked out herself. Kristy saw every post. Every smirk. Every attempt to provoke her. She said nothing. Not a single word online. Because while Lillian was flaunting, Kristy was building her case. Langston came through faster than expected. He arrived at the suite with a hard drive, dark circles under his eyes, and a look of grim satisfaction. He left breadcrumbs. Sloppy ones. Internal messages where Andre directed employees to swap files after charity signings. Audio snippets of him mocking Kristy's intelligence, she won't even notice, she's always focused on the cause. Emails referencing phase-out plan, KLM project, KLM, Kristy L. Marshall, her full maiden name. And the real kicker? Langston grinned. I found a deleted memo. Drafted, never sent. Titled, Post-Divorce Media Spin. In it, Andre had outlined a narrative. Kristy was unstable. She left him. Lillian saved him from a toxic marriage. The divorce had been mutual, amicable, and finalized with full legal consent. Kristy stared at the screen. She wasn't even angry anymore. She was focused. Frank pulled up a digital map, each pin representing a shell company, account, or legal entity tied back to Andre or Lillian. We now have motive, method, timeline, and paper trail. The next step is exposure. But not through the courts. Not yet. Then where? Kristy asked. He smiled. The boardroom. The place he thinks you don't belong. Kristy nodded slowly. If I take this to the Walters Tech board, they'll panic. Investors hate scandal. Exactly, Frank said. We hit him where it hurts, the company he built on your back. She looked at the map. At the evidence. At the reflection of herself in the hotel window, no longer shattered. Sharp. Whole. Ready. That night, Kristy sat alone at the desk, a glass of bourbon untouched beside her, flipping through a final folder Langston had delivered. It was a collection of old emails, one she had sent to Andre, planning the company's expansion, drafting initial proposals for charitable initiatives, even suggesting names for subsidiaries. He had taken all of it. Cut her out of every credit, every press release, every executive title. But not this time. This time, her name was going back on the story, as the author, not the afterthought. She opened a new document and titled it Walters Tech, Internal Review, Preliminary Board Brief. Then she began to write. Not just a takedown. A reclamation. The boardroom wasn't a courtroom. It had no judge, no jury. Just silence, spreadsheets, and the cold eyes of men who thought success erased sins. But Kristy wasn't preparing for a trial. She was preparing for something far more dangerous. Exposure. And every lie Andre Walters ever told was about to be dragged, blinking, into the light. Frank moved like a man who had waited years for this moment, not out of revenge, but out of principle. He respected Kristy's mind, and more importantly, he knew what it looked like when a man like Andre underestimated a woman like her. We already have the smoke, he told her one night over blueprints of Walters Tech's corporate structure. Now we need the fire. Langston's forensics team expanded their search. Over the next 10 days, they uncovered unreported wire transfers to foreign shell companies in Panama and Cyprus. Consulting fees paid to firms that didn't exist. Millions funneled into offshore accounts under Lillian's name, one of which was linked to a foundation meant to fund educational tools for underprivileged children. Kristy read that one twice. Her name had once been on the grant proposal. She remembered sitting with Andre at 3 a.m. designing the platform. He had taken even that. Late one night, Kristy's phone buzzed. Rachel. Her old friend. One of the few women Kristy had personally hired back when Walters Tech was just 10 people in a co-working space. Rachel had stayed loyal, rising from operations manager to a quiet but powerful role as chief compliance officer. Meet me. Somewhere private. They sat across from each other in a back booth at a downtown jazz lounge, the saxophone soft enough to drown out eavesdropping. Rachel's eyes were rimmed with stress, but focused. I stayed quiet because I didn't know how deep it went, she said, sliding a flash drive across the table. But I saw the filings come in. Andre had me sign off on reports I didn't fully understand. Now I do. Kristy opened the drive that night. Inside. Board meeting schedules, ones Kristy used to organize, now sent to Lillian. Internal audit summaries showing manipulated line items and falsified earnings. A trail of deleted emails Rachel had recovered, messages from Andre bragging to his legal team. She won't even see it coming. She's too sentimental to question me. By the time she realizes, it'll be too late. But the one that made Kristy's breath catch in her throat? I'm erasing her, piece by piece. This is the last favor I'll ever do for myself. Back in her hotel suite, Kristy stared at the screen. For a moment, her composure slipped. Just a moment. Her shoulders trembled. Her lips parted. And the tears came, slow, hot, and quiet. This time, she didn't fight them. This time, she let herself feel the full weight of it. The betrayal. The years lost. The loyalty thrown into fire like it never mattered. Rachel had also included the real timeline. Andre had begun planning her removal a full year before the charity event where he faked her signature. He had switched documents like cards in a magic trick, hiding his deception in plain sight. And then he'd gone home. Kissed her on the forehead. Made love to her. Told her she was his queen. All while drafting her exile. Kristy sat with that truth until the tears dried. Then she whispered, "If he wanted war, he should have killed me first." Frank arrived early the next morning with a thick folder under his arm and a fire in his eyes. "I've scheduled a pre-annual board review. One of your old allies is still on the committee. We'll get 10 minutes, no more." "10 is all I need," Kristy said. Frank smiled. "I thought you might say that." They began rehearsing. Not the rage. Not the heartbreak. Just the facts. The fraud. The theft. The manipulation. The undeniable, auditable evidence. Frank had his legal team mock up charts, side-by-sides, and verified source documents. Langston's forensic report was professionally bound and watermarked, ready for the board's legal counsel. Kristy read the opening statement aloud 3 times. By the 4th, her voice didn't even shake. Back at the mansion, Andre was glowing. Or at least, that's what the internet thought. Photos of him and Lillian vacationing in Monaco, dancing at a nightclub, attending a private yacht party with other tech CEOs. The headlines read, "Billionaire Bachelor back on top. Walters and new flame take Europe by storm. Kristy who?" But behind the scenes, cracks were showing. Andre had sold more company stock in the last 6 weeks than he had in the last year combined. Whispers were circulating on investor forums about internal unrest. Still, he remained confident. "They'll never believe her," he said to Lillian one night, clinking glasses. "She's too emotional. And I've already got the narrative locked." What he didn't know was that his narrative had holes. And Kristy was about to drive a tank through every single one. Kristy stood in front of the mirror, fastening the last button on a crisp navy blazer. She didn't wear black, not for this. Black was for mourning. This wasn't a funeral. This was a coronation. Behind her, Frank watched with quiet admiration. "You ready?" he asked. "I've been ready," she replied. "I just didn't know it until now." He offered his arm. She took it. And together, they walked out of the suite, 2 strategists, 2 survivors, 2 professionals with blood in their eyes and fire in their veins. The boardroom was stark. Mahogany table. Leather chairs. 12 members, all well-dressed and polite, until the word scandal entered the conversation. Kristy didn't flinch. Frank presented the opening timeline. Langston's report was distributed in silence. Rachel's email evidence was pulled up on the projector. Then Kristy stood. Calm. Controlled. Radiant. I was never just the wife. I was the architect. And what you're about to read proves that your CEO has not only defrauded me, but has put this entire company at risk. Murmurs. Eyes flicked to each other. Kristy let the silence breathe. Let it fill with doubt. Then she delivered the final blow. This isn't about revenge. This is about responsibility. And if you don't act, then I will. Publicly. Legally. And completely. Frank stood beside her, quiet and firm. The board said nothing. But their silence wasn't resistance. It was shock. And in that moment, Kristy knew. She had them. It started with a whisper. An anonymous tip email to a journalist at Tech Ledger Weekly. 2 sentences. Check Walters Tech Q2 charitable disbursements. Money didn't go where the paperwork says it did. No sender. No follow-up. No need. The dominoes were already set. By the time Andre Walters opened his laptop that morning, the headline was already live. Whispers of fraud. Billionaire tech CEO's charity numbers under scrutiny. At first, he laughed. Envy, he muttered, tossing his phone onto the kitchen counter. They all want a piece. But within 24 hours, things shifted. 3 board members called his assistant. Then 5. Then all 12. By day 3, the company's lead investor from Shanghai put out a polite but firm public statement. We are committed to full transparency and legal compliance in all philanthropic reporting. Translated, we're not going down with you. Andre was still sipping champagne by the infinity pool, pretending nothing was wrong, but even Lillian could see it. His phone never stopped buzzing. His jaw clenched tighter with every scroll. He began snapping at staff, cursing at emails, walking out of meetings early. The man who once strutted through boardrooms like a king was now pacing his study at midnight, muttering numbers under his breath like prayers. At first, Lillian thought it would blow over. She still had the mansion. The luxury. The soft robes, the designer bags, the housekeepers who flinched when she raised her voice. She liked being queen. Until one afternoon, a package arrived at the door addressed to her. Inside was a simple manila folder. No note. Just a copy of a property deed. The mansion, her mansion, the one she flaunted on social media, was still listed under a holding company tied to Andre, and only Andre. Not her. No joint ownership. No transfer documents. No legal claim. Lillian blinked. And for the first time, she felt it, unease. Within a week, the pressure turned into panic. The company's stock took a 6% dip. Tech blogs began digging through Walters' Tech's tax filings. A leaked memo hinted that more than $20 million was in review. Andre did what fragile men do when the world starts watching. He blamed everyone else. Half the accounting team was laid off overnight. Security was increased. Phone logs were monitored. Internal emails flagged. There's a mole, Andre barked in a leadership meeting. We're bleeding from the inside. One executive dared to ask if it might be his own doing. Andre fired him on the spot. By the end of the week, 5 senior staffers were gone, and morale in the company's sleek, glass tower plummeted into chaos. Kristy watched it all from her hotel room. Quiet. Focused. Every headline was a symphony. Every press leak a drumbeat. Her silence was loud. And Andre could hear it. Lillian, in her gold-heeled slippers and curated silk lounge sets, began noticing things. Andre was spending more time locked in his office. His tone with her had changed, cooler, clipped, like she was part of the furniture. She'd ask questions. He'd deflect. "Don't worry about it. It's just noise. You wouldn't understand." But Lillian wasn't stupid. One evening, while Andre was in the guest house on a call, she wandered into the study. She knew his safe code. He had shown her once, like a joke. "Just in case," he'd said. Inside, stacked neatly like a betrayal disguised as business, were files. Documents. Bank transfers. Digital statements from Swiss accounts. What stopped her cold wasn't the amounts, millions, all in hidden accounts, but the names. Her name. Used. Attached to accounts she'd never touched. Fake charities under her initials. And Kristy's. Dozens of documents, time-stamped years ago, showing that everything, the shell companies, the misdirection, the stolen assets, had started long before she even met Andre. In a drawer labeled Archives, she found something else. Early company blueprints. Prototypes. Handwritten notes in a woman's elegant script. Task list signed K.A. Kristy. There were even emails, printouts Andre had saved, showing Kristy negotiating investor terms, setting strategy, outlining product visions. She hadn't been a figurehead. She had been the foundation. Lillian sat down, stunned. The stories Andre told her, the smug jokes about Kristy being just a socialite, bad with numbers, too soft for business, they weren't just lies. They were projections. Kristy hadn't been erased. She had been stolen from. And now, she was coming back. The next week was carnage. 3 major sponsors pulled out of an upcoming Walters Tech conference. A former employee went on record with Wired, describing a culture of financial secrecy and intimidation. Andre's private messages were leaked, including ones mocking regulators, boasting about bending laws, and laughing at charity watchdogs. His PR team quit. The mansion, once alive with parties, fell silent. Andre began drinking before noon. He'd sit by the pool, staring into the water like it could offer a way out. Lillian stopped speaking to him. She'd started locking her phone. Started whispering to the house staff. Started collecting her own copies of the files. At night, Kristy stood by the hotel window, watching the lights of a city she helped shape flicker like fireflies below. She hadn't given a single interview. Hadn't posted a single quote. Hadn't once appeared in public. And yet, she was the ghost haunting Andre's empire. Every investor knew her name now. Every board member was rereading her memos. Every journalist wanted to know how a billionaire managed to throw out his wife and lose his fortune in the same breath. Kristy didn't smile often. But on the night Bloomberg ran the story, the woman Andre erased, she allowed herself a moment. A breath. Not of revenge. Of clarity. He thought she would scream. He thought she would beg. Instead, she did the one thing he never expected. She outplayed him. The email went out at 7:06 a.m. Subject: Emergency session, full board attendance required. Time: 11 a.m. Location: Walters Tech HQ, executive level, room 1A. No explanation. No agenda. But everyone knew. Something big was coming. Andre walked into the boardroom like he still owned it. Charcoal suit. Rolex watch. That half-smile he wore when he wanted to pretend nothing ever touched him. Morning, he said, sliding into the chair at the head of the table. Let's make this quick. I've got a flight to catch. The board members exchanged glances. Some avoided eye contact altogether. He didn't notice. Or he didn't care. At exactly 11:02 a.m., the door opened again. And Kristy Andre walked in. No announcement. No hesitation. Just silence and heels clicking like war drums across the polished floor. She wore a slate blue suit that fit like armor. Her hair was swept back, minimal jewelry, eyes clear, unflinching. Not the grieving ex-wife. Not the erased woman. She looked like a storm in silk. Andre's smile faltered for the first time. What is she doing here? He asked, voice sharpening. Kristy didn't answer him. She looked directly at the chair at the far end of the table, the one once reserved for her, back when Walters Tech was still in its infancy. No one stopped her as she sat. Frank followed behind, placing a thick leather-bound folder on the table. Langston stood by the door, laptop in hand. Rachel, already seated, gave Kristy the smallest of nods. The room held its breath. Kristy stood slowly. Every movement calm. Precise. She opened the folder and slid copies to each board member. I suggest you follow along. Page by page, she laid it out. Forged signatures on divorce filings. Asset transfers disguised as charity donations. $40 million funneled through shell corporations. Accounts in Lillian's name used to hide Andre's trail. Misappropriation of investor funds. Fraudulent tax filings linked to the Walters Foundation. Kristy didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The document screamed for her. She clicked a remote. A projector screen behind her lit up with time-stamped emails, wire transfer confirmations, and internal messages with Andre's digital signature. All verified by a third-party forensic team, she said. I've also submitted a copy to the SEC and the IRS. Gasps. A chair scraped the floor. Andre's face flushed crimson. This is a setup, he snapped. She's fabricating. The metadata is clean, Frank said coolly. Every file tracks back to your encrypted drive. We didn't create the fraud. You did. The room exploded into noise. Board members flipping through documents, whispering, raising hands to ask questions. Kristy waited. Then she said the line that silenced the room. You've trusted him to lead this company. But everything he stole from me, he stole from you, too. Rachel rose. I move for an immediate freeze of all Andre Walters' executive access. Pending full internal investigation. Another voice added. Seconded. Frank didn't even smile. He just leaned back, watching it all collapse, exactly as planned. Security entered at the board's request, too firm, suited men from the company's internal team. "Sir," one of them said to Andre, "you'll need to come with us." "You have no idea who you're messing with," Andre barked. "This is my company. Mine." He turned to Kristy, finger pointing, voice cracking. "You ruined me." And finally, she looked at him. "I steady." Voice quiet. "No, Andre. You did that yourself." And with that, the guards escorted him out of the boardroom, out of the company, out of the empire he built on her back. An hour later, the board voted. Unanimously. Rachel was named interim CEO, with full authority pending a permanent appointment. Kristy didn't campaign for it. Didn't ask. She didn't need a title to prove who she was. As Rachel stepped into leadership, she turned to Kristy and said, "Thank you for building the foundation we forgot you laid." Kristy just nodded. She wasn't here for praise. She was here for correction. Outside the building, the press had begun to gather. Kristy stepped past the reporters without a word, Frank close behind. "How does it feel?" he asked as they reached the car. She looked back, once, at the glass tower that bore her fingerprints in every design, every floor plan, every decision that ever made it valuable. "Like I just reclaimed my voice," she said. Then she slid into the car and closed the door. Behind her, the empire Andre stole had finally been taken back. The mansion was quiet when Andre returned. No music. No laughter. No champagne flutes clinking by the pool. Just silence, and the faint hum of the AC winding through a house that now felt too big for him. He loosened his tie and dropped his phone on the marble kitchen island. No messages. No missed calls. Not even from Lillian. For a man who used to command rooms, Andre Walters was now a ghost in his own castle. He called her name once. Twice. No answer. When he finally found her, she was in the study, her legs crossed, face lit by the soft glow of a laptop screen. Not dressed in silk, not wrapped in Kristy's robe, but in plain black leggings and a sweatshirt. Unbothered. Focused. She didn't look up when he entered. "Where the hell have you been?" he asked, the tired edge in his voice barely masking the panic. "Reading," she said. "Learning. Watching you lie to everyone, including me." Andre laughed nervously, tried to downplay it. "Come on, babe. You know how the media spins things. I told you. Don't." Her voice cut like a blade. She turned the laptop around. Displayed on the screen were files she wasn't supposed to see. Bank statements. Company registrations. Legal filings using her name, for charities that didn't exist. Her name was tied to over $12 million in illicit transactions. "I thought you were protecting me," she said quietly. "Turns out I was just the next disguise." Andre stepped closer, but she pulled a flash drive from her pocket and held it up. "I made copies. Of everything. Lillian, listen. You don't understand how complicated this is. This is business. You were safe with me. Still are. Just delete that, Anne. You didn't even put the house in my name," she said. The words landed like a slap. "I wore her clothes. Slept in her bed. Called you baby while you carved her name out of the walls, and you were doing the same thing to me." Lillian stood, grabbed her purse, and walked past him toward the door. "Where are you going?" Andre asked, suddenly alarmed. To deliver these to Kristy. You're making a mistake. No, Andre, she said without turning. You did that yourself. And she left. Kristy didn't flinch when she saw Lillian waiting in the hotel lobby. No screaming. No confrontation. Just two women sitting across from each other in a quiet corner of the lounge. Lillian slid the flash drive across the table. Bank logs. Passwords. Screenshots. Even video clips of him admitting what he did. I recorded them before he changed his phone. Kristy tilted her head, studying the woman who had once worn her life like a costume. Why now? Lillian's voice was low. Because I thought I'd won. But all I did was walk into your prison. You didn't lose, Kristy. You were targeted. And now, he's coming for me next. Kristy nodded. You made the right choice. I know, Lillian said. And Kristy, for what it's worth. I'm sorry. For a brief moment, there was nothing but the hush of distant traffic and the soft clink of glasses being cleared by a waiter. Kristy picked up the flash drive. You just handed him his ending. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was full. Reporters lined the hallway. Cameras flashed as Andre entered, flanked by a legal team that had already started distancing themselves in whispers. Kristy sat at the front, calm, composed, every detail of her looked deliberate. No vengeance in her eyes. Just truth. The judge was methodical, reading through charges, evidence, timelines. The flash drive Lillian provided had filled every gap. The court heard audio of Andre bragging about switching divorce documents. Screenshots of fake signatures with time-stamped discrepancies. Wire transfers through shell companies under Lillian's name, without her knowledge or consent. Deleted emails where he mocked the legal system and described Kristy as finished. Then came the ruling. Mr. Walters, this court finds your actions to be criminal, manipulative, and fraudulent. The divorce is hereby annulled due to proven deception and lack of lawful consent. The marriage remains valid under the law. Therefore, all marital assets, including corporate holdings, real estate, and offshore accounts, are subject to equitable division. The gallery erupted. Andre stood frozen. What does that mean?" he muttered. Kristy rose, already knowing. "It means," her attorney said clearly, "Kristy receives half. Half the company. Half the houses. Half the cars. Half the bank accounts. Even half the funds he'd hidden offshore." Andre's knees buckled. A clerk moved to steady him, but he waved them off, his face pale, his empire officially and legally shattered. Outside, the press swarmed, but Kristy gave no statement. She didn't need to. The headline spoke for her. Fraud exposed, Kristy Andre gets half in billion-dollar blow to Walters. She was the architect, how one woman took back everything. From erased to empowered, Kristy's courtroom victory. Andre disappeared from the public eye. No more yacht parties. No more speaking engagements. He went from boardroom legend to cautionary tale. Kristy stood by the window that night, looking out over the city. She didn't feel victorious. She felt clear. This wasn't a revenge story. It was a correction. Andre took everything he could from her. And she took it all back, with strategy, not spite. Behind her, the room buzzed softly, Frank on a call, Langston closing files, Rachel sipping tea. Her people. Her circle. And now, finally, her life. The mansion on Mulholland Drive had once been her dream. Now, it was just coordinates. The gates creaked open as Kristy stepped out of the black sedan. She hadn't seen the house in person since the day Andre threw her out. Funny how the place still looked perfect from a distance, sunlight catching on clean glass, the water in the pool still. But it wasn't perfect. It was rotting from the inside. 3 city officials in hard hats stood by the front doors. They greeted Kristy with the careful professionalism they reserved for wealthy homeowners and high-stakes cases. "Ms. Andre," one said, clipboard in hand, "you requested a full structural inspection before taking possession." Kristy nodded. "I need to know what I'm inheriting." "All of it." They entered. What followed was a walk through a hollowed-out empire. Load-bearing walls tampered with during renovations Andre never permitted. Hidden mold behind luxury panels, toxic, according to the environmental report. Plumbing rerouted dangerously. Wiring exposed in crawl spaces. A staircase that sagged slightly, but fatally, a silent collapse waiting to happen. "This property is unsafe," the lead inspector said flatly. He cut corners. Paid off permits. Got fast approvals using his name. "Can it be repaired?" Kristy asked. "Anything can be fixed," he replied. "But honestly? It would be cheaper to rebuild." Kristy looked around. The house where her marriage ended. Where she was erased. Where another woman once wore her robe and drank from her wedding glasses. And for the first time since she walked out with a suitcase and a spine of steel. She smiled. Within the week, the courts returned the deed to Kristy. Andre had no grounds to appeal. Not after the fraud. Not after the illegal renovation filings. Not after the judge had declared the previous transfer null and void. The property was hers again. Her name engraved on the title in black ink, permanent, undeniable. Andre had been forcibly removed after the inspection. Lillian had already gone, weeks earlier. The house sat empty, but the memory of betrayal still pulsed in the walls. Everyone assumed Kristy would return. Reclaim her throne. Take back the mansion that was stolen from her. She didn't. Instead, she listed the property. Sold it within 3 days to a private developer. For a record-breaking price. Reporters begged for a quote. "You've taken back everything he stole, why sell the house?" Kristy gave the same answer every time. "I'm not here to relive the past. I'm here to build the future." The money from the sale was substantial. Enough to fund a dozen lifetimes of luxury. Kristy used every cent to build something far more lasting. She launched the Marshall Initiative, a scholarship program for young black women in tech, with full tuition, housing, mentorship, and seed capital. Reboot Lab, the business accelerator for marginalized entrepreneurs building tech startups with social impact. A private investment firm focused on ethical innovation, co-founded quietly with Frank and 2 other female investors. No headlines announced her moves. She didn't throw launch parties or walk red carpets. But her name began to reappear, quietly, powerfully, in the footnotes of every success story rising from her network. Rachel called her on a rainy afternoon. "The board's voting soon," she said. "They want you back. I want you back. Permanent seat." Executive role. You'd help reshape the company from the inside. Kristy leaned back in her chair, looking out over a skyline she now touched from the shadows. "Thank you, Rachel," she said. "But I'm not going back. I don't need a seat at someone else's table anymore." "Then what do you want?" "My own." It was a letter. Not a call. Not a meeting. Just a letter, hand-delivered, in Andre's handwriting. The envelope was thick. Cream-colored. The kind they used to send thank-you notes to investors. Inside. "Kristy, I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for forgetting who you were. I told myself lies to justify erasing you, but the truth is, you were always the better half. The best part of my life. And I see now, too late, that everything I tried to build without you turned to ash. I hope someday you'll find it in you to forgive me. A." Kristy folded the letter once. Placed it in a drawer. She didn't need revenge. And she didn't need his remorse. She had already won. Within months, her programs began producing results. A scholarship recipient landed a junior engineer role at NASA. A startup from her accelerator raised $5 million for an app reducing medical bias in diagnostics. Her investment firm funded a company that created affordable AI tutoring tools for inner-city schools. She became something greater than wealthy. Greater than successful. She became a symbol. Of grace. Of rebirth. Of what happens when a black woman refuses to break, and instead builds something better from the ashes of betrayal. One evening, Kristy stood on the rooftop of her new office space, smaller than the mansion, but filled with laughter, late-night ideas, and dreams she owned. Frank stood beside her, sipping wine. "You ever miss it?" he asked. "The house. The spotlight. The old life." Kristy smiled. "That house was never my home," she said. "It was a cage. He just dressed it up in glass and gold." Frank nodded. "And now?" She turned toward the glowing skyline, lit not by nostalgia, but by opportunity. "Now, I'm free." It didn't happen all at once. There was no grand announcement. No viral headline. No dramatic kiss in the rain or paparazzi capturing a final victory lap. Instead, Kristy's new beginning began the way all real things do. Quietly. Honestly. Unshakably. It started with dinner. Frank made the reservation under her name. Not Mrs. Walters. Not +1. Just Kristy Andre. He picked a small restaurant tucked into a brick alley downtown, lit by candles and soft jazz. They didn't talk about Andre. Or the lawsuits. Or the boardroom war. They talked about art. About travel. About the companies they were investing in. About the world they were both still building, this time, side by side. No labels. No declarations. Just space. And respect. Weeks passed. Frank stopped calling her partner in business documents. He called her Kristy. He called her sharp as hell. Sometimes, he called her sunlight, usually when she was working late and didn't know he was watching. He didn't ask to fix her. He just stood beside her as she rebuilt herself. Brick by brick. Vision by vision. Heartbeat by heartbeat. She is no longer broken. There were still moments, quiet ones, when the past flickered through her mind. The suitcase by the pool. The smell of Lillian's perfume in her hallway. The word divorce thrown at her like a weapon. But those memories no longer had power. They had become what they were always meant to be. Fuel. Kristy was not broken. She was reforged. Sharper. Wiser. Whole. The glass-walled boardroom was nothing like the one Andre once ruled. No ego in the architecture. Just clean lines. Smart lighting. A table surrounded by women and men of color, entrepreneurs with purpose and grit in their bones. Kristy sat at the head of the table, facing Frank across from her. Between them, a leather-bound contract. Her name embossed on the first page. Kristy Andre, founder and CEO. K. Andre Ventures. A venture capital firm built to fund tech companies led by women of color. Startups with social missions. Tools for education, equity, and the future. She picked up the pen. The room stilled. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind her, the city glowed, alive, bustling, infinite. Kristy signed. Then looked up at Frank. "I didn't come back for revenge," she said, voice calm, eyes steady. "I came back for my future." The elevator doors opened into the lobby. Kristy stepped out, head high, heels confident, coat draped over her shoulders like armor. Outside, the night air was cool. City lights danced in the glass of the building she now owned. Her car pulled up, but she didn't get in yet. She stood on the curb for a moment. Breathed in. No cameras. No crowd. Just a woman who had been erased. Replaced. Discarded. And who now stood free. Powerful. Respected. Loved. Andre's name